Okay, we'll start. Happy Monday. Welcome everybody. I'm super excited to see a full lecture hall. Hello. I'm super excited to start this summer semester with you. And I'm very happy that Juxtaposition still draws so many people from so many different disciplines. I see a lot of familiar faces. So there's recurring guests and students here, that's beautiful, and a lot of new faces, that's also wonderful. So today will be the introduction into the whole topic. It's an introduction into why this is important and why I am pushing for this format here, Juxtapositions. This is also the first of 10 talks this semester. I'm sure you kind of checked it already out online. You saw the various guests that are coming. But it's 10 different talks on perspectives of contemporary cultural production, to put it in a simple way. And the term juxtaposition basically describes the act or the instant of placing two things next to each other that don't really belong to one another. And this kind of contrast program is also the whole idea of this lecture series. You will hear positions from people that are completely maybe juxtaposing the previous speaker or the one after, or even in their own discipline, just in mind. There's a million of juxtapositions, of ambiguities in their own practices that make up their practice. And it's also an attempt of mine to push for these kind of cross-disciplinary educational formats here at the UDK. I've been a visiting professor here since the winter semester of 2001, so this is the fourth semester. Just starting off, because as a pilot project, as a little balloon to test how it works and how it is being received, also by the student body. And we're now in the fourth semester, and I'm very thrilled about this. And it's, again, a beautiful chance to bring curious minds together, whether they're artists or designers or musicians or choreographers or dancers or writers or curators. It doesn't really matter, but that's the moment also for you to get a chance to engage with them and actually really ask questions. As I said, I'll break the ice, and usually I use this to show you my work, like what I do, but I decided otherwise, because I did it already a couple of times. So if you're really curious, you can look it up online and you can hear me talk about my projects, the stuff that I do, the exhibitions, the books, etc. But today I'll rather take you along on this kind of intellectual or creative stroll, on a walk, trying to explain to you what this is all about and why it really matters. But as you will see throughout this talk, there's this kind of rather deliberate eclecticism or a refusal of coherence and this kind of ongoing flight or escape from, let's say, limiting binary systems that quite accurately describe my professional attempts throughout my career. And this notion of hybridity goes all the way back for me. And it's been there from the get-go. So what you're looking at is an original cadavre exquis from when I was maybe 5 years old. And it says Lukas wenn denkt, so Lukas when he's thinking. I found it a couple of years ago, you know, the game where one draws the head and then the body, etc. And this is quite on point to this day, somewhere between clown, pirate, Easter bunny, Scarface, and all of that in the academic context. But my academic background is not in the arts, but in the kind of humanistic studies. So I have a master's degree in philosophy, comparative religious studies, and ethnology. So cultural studies in the widest sense. And my particular interest has always been somehow the interrelation between very abstract ideas and thoughts and their sometimes very concrete manifestations and realizations. And furthermore, I've been always very keen in exploring like different and even diverging systems of knowledge and understanding. And that's what I do also in my professional practice. So I work as a curator or a writer, even as an artist, an educator, in very different formats of what I call knowledge dissemination or communication. So I'm kind of interested in using teaching, or exhibitions, or symposia, or films, or books, to kind of connect people and places and ideas. So in a way, I see myself more of as a cultural translator of sorts. And it is definitely my aim there to somehow find connective meanings, yeah? So to show multiple readings or show the possibility of multiple readings, but also find connective meanings and inspire us to think outside the box. And this is very much what I'm doing here, or what I've been actually hired to do here at the Berlin University of the Arts. So, speaking of the Berlin University of the Arts, this was also for me quite interesting. This is the setup of the university. There's 4 faculties and then kind of 3 connected institutions. And out of curiosity, we can do a little survey. The College of Fine Arts, which includes art in context, fine arts, and also the teaching programs, also Lehramt. Who of you comes from the College of Fine Arts? Please raise your hand. And who of you comes from the College of Architecture, Media and Design? That is product design, fashion design, architecture. There's a lot in faculty too. Okay, so I think faculty 2 we have to break down. So who of you comes from architecture? Okay. And who from product design? Nice. How about fashion design? A few. And GWK? Yep, represent. Art and media? Visual communication? A few. Okay, cool. How about College of Music? Who is from the College of Music? 1, 2, there's a shy number 3, or is it not? No, okay, you're not sure what faculty you're in? Okay, so there's a few from music, which is amazing what the UDK has to offer on the side of music. Take a look at it, there's so many like liturgical music, composition, organ improvisation, like studies you probably don't even know that they exist here. But how about faculty number 4, the College of Performing Arts? Stage design, voice opera design. Okay, let's see there. Who comes from stage design? How about voice and opera? And how about theater and performing arts? Acting, as simple as that? Okay. Musical show? Okay, good. We had a lot of musical show in the last semester. And now I'm curious, anyone coming from the Berlin Career College here? Yes, nice. There's not so many. Is it leadership and digital innovation? Is it music therapy? Sound studies? Yes, nice. And HCT, the Inter-University Center for Dance Berlin. Anyone in there? They're all the way in Wedding. It's a beautiful location. Highly recommend to visit it. And how about the Jazz Institute? Okay, so you see, we got everything except for the HCT and the Jazz Institute. But it shows you also like how big this university actually is and how many different faculties. And often you don't even know the other programs within your faculty, never mind the other faculties. But more facts, this is a very big university. So we have 4,100 students, which makes the UDK, I think, one of the biggest art universities in Europe. And we have 200 professorships. That's a lot, yeah? With 700 assistant lecturers, which is also crazy. That's like the size of most of the art schools that I've been teaching at before. And 250 mid-level employees, 70 programs, and 21 locations. So the UDK is not only this building or whatever you study where you are, but there's actually 21 locations in the city that make up the UDK. So the university is rather a universe, actually, if you really think about it. And this is really what I'm trying to somehow put together. And not to mention the 170 like partner universities that exist. How many of you are Erasmus students or exchange students at the moment? Oh, quite a few, wonderful. So now you add them to the list as well. So it's quite a flex for a university what we have here. I haven't even said anything, yes, but I'm working with memes here too. So what I wanted to say that getting into this university is really not easy. All of you had a different way to get in. Like each faculty, each program has different standards. So before we do anything, a big applause to all of you. Like literally, give yourself an applause. Yes. And I don't mean this in a cheesy way, like I really mean it. You already took a huge step, and that's really deserves the congratulations here. And don't take this for granted, because it's special. Some of the programs have maybe 800 applicants, and maybe 30 or 50 get in. So just the fact that you're here is amazing, and with that, you're already ahead of me. And that's a true story. So when I grew up in Berlin, I was kind of absolutely sure that I would go and study at the UDK, the Berlin University of the Arts. I prepared my, whole application. I took the subway, and at Zoologischer Garten, I chickened out. Like I literally turned around and took the subway home again, and I stayed with my studies of philosophy and comparative religious studies. And I really enjoyed it, and I'm happy that I stayed with my studies. But I chickened out. I didn't dare to because the pressure was so high. So for all of you sitting here, it's special, and I really mean it. You made it already into the system and really use it to your full advantage. That's like the one thing. If you're here, make sure that you take full advantage of it and connect to everyone that you meet. But how life plays. I'm back. Okay, we did the applause. Now I have to do the spoiler alert. And what I mean is, all of you have subscribed for a highly precarious lifestyle. So no matter what faculty you're in, no matter whether you are a musician or a becoming architect or a product designer, the life outside of this ivory tower of academia, in particular art academia, is tricky. Let's put it this way. And that's why it's also my intention with this lecture series, and actually with all of my seminars that I'm offering here, is in a way to start to prepare you for a life outside of university by showing you examples of very unconventional, experimental, and also collaborative ways of working. And not only working, but doing your thing, like doing what you like most, what you're passionate about. And this is by bringing these people here, or even me as an example, that like literally draw outside the lines, that don't really maybe follow the rules of how to do things. And I also believe that in a very rapidly changing environment that we live in on many levels, social, cultural, technological, etc., there is actually an ongoing demand for professionals that can interlink with many other disciplines. We had this discussion earlier, Jakob and I, that also with the rise of artificial intelligence, specializations will get less and less important. What is more and more important to be able to connect various fields of research, to connect various disciplines and find patterns in these. And I think it's very, very important to learn that early on and really exercises and apply these transdisciplinary practices for also a transformational change. And literally all of this is, to me at least, about collaboration. Nothing happens in a vacuum. This idea of you creating on your own, in your studio or in front of your laptop, it's not true. Everything happens in collaborations, whether you know it or you don't know it. You're always influenced by something. That saying, it takes a village to raise a child, and that's very true too for the creative process, or quite literally for everything, but definitely for cultural production. Teamwork is key. But teamwork is also not easy. So teamwork, has to be learned. You have to put a lot of work into it to make it work. We did an exercise, I don't know, who was here last semester? A few of you. You remember we did these kind of collaborations where you had to work together, and there were beautiful results, but it was also tricky to really make it work. Just to get people together in the room, think about something and work on something. So what I'm saying, it really pays out at the end, but you have to put work into it. But then teamwork is really dream work. And there's also, now I'll drop a lot of links for you. So at the end, I'll send an email to each one of you, to all of you, with all the literature links. But there is an interesting theory by an anarchist philosopher, Peter Kropotkin, who elaborated in a series of essays published actually in 1902 already, under the title Mutual Aid, on the factor of evolution, where he explores the role of mutually beneficial cooperation and reciprocity for mutual aid, both in the animal kingdom and in human societies, both past and present. So Kropotkin basically argues that mutual aid, that we help one another, has pragmatic advantages for the survival of human and animal communities. And this is quite an opposite to Darwin's idea of survival of the fittest. No, we have to fight, whoever wins, gets the word. But he argues not really this, and also this, I don't know, there was Darwin with survival of the fittest, and there was actually also Rousseau with an ideal of universal love. And Kropotkin says neither fight nor love, but it's actually very pragmatic mutual aid. We will get further if we work together. So that's his theory, and I really like that idea. And there's a similar thought that Lynn Margulis, have you come across her work yet? Argued in a book called The Symbiotic Planet. She's a very renowned scientist, and she showed in this book that symbiosis, which simply means members of different species living in physical close contact with each other, is crucial to the origin of evolution or evolutionary novelty. So new things only happen when symbiosis happen, when members of different species live very close together. So it's that same argument basically that we heard before. And that's ranging from bacteria, like literally the smallest kinds of life, to the largest, the living Earth itself. And she explains us here the symbiotic origins of many of evolution's most important innovations. So the very cells we are made of started as symbiotic unions of different kinds of bacteria. So there's this idea of kind of diversity in everything. And this, again, working together. And then there's another book, and actually I showed them also last semester, these three books, because they're kind of a theoretical foundation for what we're doing here, what I'm trying to do here, is Peter Berg. It's a British historian, and he wrote a book called The Polymath. Generally speaking, he's an historian who wrote a lot of books on the history of knowledge, per se. But in this study, he examines the polymath. The polymath is someone who, like the Renaissance man, as a figure who engages in very different fields of research and brings them together, like an Universalgenie, we would say in German. So he studied in this book 500 polymaths whose life trajectories were often like totally idiosyncratic and difficult to reduce to a limited number of patterns. And Berg's polymaths, when he analyzed them, they worked in multiple fields that are now considered completely separate disciplines. But his subjects instead insisted on the unity of knowledge. So it's not a contradiction to be working in many different fields at the same time. Quite the opposite. This is actually what makes you even stronger or more powerful. And they're kind of hovering in the gaps between, let's say, theory and practice, between pure and applied knowledge, between detailed analysis and general vision, between rigor and impressionism. So they're all rather uncertain spaces, let's say, yeah? But yeah, however, Berg argues that instead the polymaths they created almost their very own discipline, which is more the art of learning, if anything. So let's try that too, maybe just a little bit at least. Because though we still think of ourselves as somehow coherent beings, I'm Lukas Feireiss, born in Berlin, raised, etc. here, in belief that our awareness of the world is a continuous mental state, we are actually constantly evolving. We shift basically from one percept of thought to the next, from actuality to dream, from association to deduction, and from recollection to imagination. So human consciousness is an ever-changing collage, basically. It's a cut-up of mental fragments held together by a rather fluctuating sense of self. And also recent neurological studies show that memory, imagination, and consciousness are themselves stitched. They're quilted, they're pastiched. They're like a big carpet out of many different pieces. It's not one single unity. So it's all rather fragmentary. And as maybe Walter Benjamin would have put it, and according to Walter Benjamin, who was a very renowned German writer, cultural scientist, philosopher, novelist, he said that the amorphous fragment juxtaposition produces a multiplicity of meanings, which always interrupts the context in which they are. Maybe you're familiar with also the writings of him. If not, again, I'll send all the links. One famous work is the Passagenwerk, or the Arcades project, which is the best example actually of an unfinished project composed of fragments, including quotes he had collected, as well as own writings organized in different themes. So he really is an advocate of the fragmentary, the unfinished, and the incomplete. And that's what I'm trying to do here as well. I don't believe in this idea of something is complete, is full, is done, is pure. I highly object this notion. And I'm also extremely suspicious of anything or anyone that speaks of a totality or completeness. As soon as we have that word of something is pure, like all my red flags go up. Because I think nothing is pure. Like everything is rather dirty and messy, and that's beautiful. And usually ideas of completeness and totality and pureness, they lead quickly to some form of essentialism, like the pure essence of something, or the notion of pureness. And that's actually just a stone throw away from fascist ideologies, if you think about it. So anyways, I don't believe in pureness, I believe in the dirtiness of things, in the messiness of things. And in here, I think very much in line with another prominent thinker that I'm very inspired by, a prominent scholar, Donna Haraway. She is known in the fields of feminist and postmodern science and technology studies, and her notion of tentacular thinking. And I'll give you a quick break now. This is going to be a complete overkill of information that I'm giving you. I'm maybe not even halfway through with all the links, but don't worry and don't get afraid of all the references here, but just let it think in. Just take with you whatever stays, and the rest don't worry about it. But I'm giving you like a rundown of all the stuff that inspires me to do what I'm doing, why I believe it's important. So again, of all the references, don't be afraid. So tentacular thinking, back to Haraway. She wrote an amazing book called, no, it's too quick. She wrote an amazing book called Staying with the Trouble. I thought actually I had a cover of the book here, in which Haraway discusses how humans and non-humans are, again, messily connected through tentacular links, like a tentacular, like a octopus, for example, and practices. So she describes the necessity and benefit of complexity and encourages us to embrace the messiness of complexity. And I quote her now, "We require each other in unexpected collaborations and combinations, in generative joy, terror, and collective thinking." So Haraway, in a way, reminds us, to be one, you must be many. And this is very much also in line with Margulis, the symbiotic planet that I mentioned earlier, because she argues that we will need to recognize basically ourselves or our status as a form of assembly or as assemblies, from the microbiological gut brain to the human dependence on the hospitality of our shared planet. So to be one, you have to be many and embracing the kind of messiness of complexity. No, who do I have here? I'm going to find. Now this is hopefully it's is it here? Yes, here we go. Which brings us to another idea or another theory. And again, don't be worried, it's going to be a lot. But again, you have an homework, you have to think what stays with you guys, yeah? So let's move from the metaphorics of tentacles, like the octopus, to the scavenger in our exploration of fragmentary methodologies. What is a scavenger? A scavenger is basically an animal that feeds on carrion, on dead plant and dead animals, on material that's left over, on refuse. A scavenger is also a person who searches or collects discarded materials. And queer theorist and writer Jack Halberstam, I don't know if you come across her work, she coined the term of scavenger methodology. And when I first came across that term, it was such a huge relief to me. Again, I come from a more classical academic background of humanistics, and there's a lot of rules to follow, how to do academic writing. And when I came across the term of scavenger methodology, it was a huge kind of relief for me, because she describes her way of working as, in the context of queer methodology is a scavenger methodology that uses different methods to collect and produce information. It combines methods that are often cast as being at odds with each other, and it refuses the academic compulsion towards disciplinary coherence. That's a nice one. It refuses the academic compulsion to disciplinary coherence. We always try to be coherent with the things that we're doing. And she's saying no. So she treats a philosophical essay or an academic research paper the same as she would treat a video on YouTube or an Instagram channel. So treat them all on the same level and mix them together. So that's her on the top right there. And there's also something about doing something that moves against what seems evident in all queer theory and pedagogies that resonates very deeply with me. It's also about bringing alternative knowledges or making new knowledge or new pathways of knowing through contradiction even, and seemingly impossible combinations. So this unhierarchical, rather wild style approach appears to be the best way to do justice also, in my opinion, to the really extraordinary complexity of the world in which we live. And speaking of extraordinary diversity of the world we live in, another great thinker in this field was French-speaking writer, essayist, and philosopher Edouard Glissant. Who has come across his work in your studies? I see a few shy hands going up. How about Haraway, by the way? More popular? And Benjamin? Most. So Edouard Glissant looks under the term of creolization at the contemporary reality of colliding cultures as one of accelerating multiplicity. And he's Caribbean-born, so the archipelago, the collection of islands, was very central to Glissant's theoretical work or his kind of situated knowledge. An archipelago literally is a cluster of small islands, and when he uses the word, he imagines something which exists in opposition to the, let's say, static constraints of the continent. So he speaks of archipelagic thought versus the continental thought. The continental thought is rather static, yeah? It's fixed. And archipelagic thought is moving, it's not fixed, it's unstable. And in his essays, Glissant asserted that the way of thinking born of the archipelago or of the archipelagical form was marked by unpredictability, by multiplicity in oneness, and ambiguity, which were all equally present in what he then termed creolization. And actually, with his ideas in his, what he called poetics of relation. We can go full circle again back to Walter Benjamin's notion of the fragment, Haraway's notion of situated knowledges, and because he, or Glissant encants like a state of relation also as something very amorphous and an ever-changing category. And however, Glissant foregrounds a term in his work, in the very beginning of poetics relation, the rhizome. And the rhizome is kind of the conceptual scaffolding for his poetics of relation. And he writes, rhizomatic thought is in principle behind what I call the poetics of relation, in which each and every identity is extended to relationship with the other. Have you come across the word of the rhizome or rhizomatic thinking? If yes, raise your hand. There's a few. So where does that come from? That's Guattari and Deleuze, and actually Glissant and Deleuze were buddies, as you can see down here. And in a way, Glissant's rhizome is actually a very, let's say, careful rendering of the Deleuze-Guattarian philosophy. And even though the rhizome is almost, let's say, Deleuzian kitsch by now, because it's been, used everywhere and by everyone, it still has a kind of particular meaning for Glissant. And it basically, whenever we speak of decentralization or fragmentalization or flux or movement, any chance, we come back to this term. But it's a concept of post-structural philosophy, and it describes a non-linear network that connects any point to any other point. So that kind of might sound familiar, but what is actually a rhizome? If you look at it etymologically speaking, it comes from biology, and it's a continuously growing horizontal underground stem, which puts out like lateral shoots and roots at intervals. So it's basically a root system. That's what you see underground, in the trees. And it's, again, here they oppose it to a system of knowledge like a tree, which is very hierarchic. You have the roots, they go up, and you have the kind of the crown of the tree. That's a theory of knowledge that's rather hierarchic. And they have a very flat hierarchy where it says no, knowledge is actually distributed all over the place, and everything is connected and interlinked. And this is also why the rhizome became such a popular metaphor for the internet. So it's all written obviously pre-internet, but it's it's been virally used to describe the way the internet works, because it fits, because it's a theory and research that allows for like multiple hierarchical entry and exit points in data representation and interpretation. And that's basically what the internet is too. No? It's a global system of interconnected computer networks. But coming back to the original metaphor, a rhizome, as another continuously growing horizontal underground stem, is also what biologists today call the wood wide web, or the internet of forests. I know I'm taking you very far, but bear with me, we'll make a full circle with this. So more precisely, a term that's used to describe the underground network of fungi that connect the roots of the trees and other plants in a forest ecosystem. So you recognize the pattern here, no? We find similar metaphors in the world of technology as well as the natural world, as in the way that kind of our brain works. There's a great book on this topic, Entangled Life. Have you come across this book by Merlin Sheldrake? I see one hand going up. Yes, Mo, anyone else? Okay, but you've noticed that in the last couple of years, like fungi and mushrooms have become quite a topic in the arts, in the biennales, in science. It's kind of becoming more and more, and for a good reason. So in this book, Sheldrake shows us the world, let's say, from a fungal point of view. So his research provides like a chance and change of perspective by very vividly exploring fungi that range for like miles underground, and are on the one hand the like largest organism on this planet, to those that link plants together in complex networks such as the wood wide web. Now, why am I talking about mycelium here? Because mycelium, fungi, mushrooms also throw our concepts of individuality and even intelligence into question. So in line with what I said earlier, with Margulis and Haraway, to be one, you have to be many, the symbiotic planet, evolution happens in symbiosis, we are reminded to recognize us, ourselves, as somehow entangled assemblies. Not totally also unlikely to the experience that many people have with very special mushrooms. But speaking of recognizing our, let's say, entangled status quo, or recognizing ourselves as entangled assemblies, I'll take you even to quantum physics tonight. So, who has dabbled into quantum physics? A few. So, that's been my latest rabbit hole. So, since the beginning of the year, I got totally sucked into quantum physics. I still don't understand it, but what I understand is mind-boggling and connects again to what we're doing here. So, quantum physics basically is the study of matter and energy at the most fundamental level, like subatomic level. And quantum physics shows us also that nothing is ever fixed, stable, or static, and that things are somewhat strangely vibrating and strangely connected. And there's one phenomena that's being discussed in quantum physics. And quantum physics is not theoretical physics. I mean, laser technology, MRTs, quantum computing, it all works. It's not just theory, you know, this is an applied physical reality that we can deal with this. But anyway, quantum entanglement, for example, is a very bizarre and counterintuitive phenomena that explains how actually I have to laugh almost how fucking far I'm taking you tonight, but it's nice, just bear with me. How two subatomic particles can be intimately linked to each other, even if they're separated by billions of light years of space. So despite their vast separation, a change induced in one will affect the other. So quantum entanglement means there's one particle piece here and the other one is light years away, and if I tickle this one will react too. There's a connection, and physicists can observe this, but they cannot explain why this is happening, which is also amazing. So as a rabbit hole recommendation, go into quantum entanglement. And Einstein also dealt with that, no? And he called it the spooky action at a distance. He couldn't explain it. He was like, I don't understand it, it's a spooky action at a distance. But over the past few decades, physicists have really demonstrated the reality of spooky action over great distances, and it's mind-blowing. And again, it shows us we're not really separated, and things are connected and entangled and interconnected. And now, too much of that, I'll give you a bit of a nicer metaphor, because I'm going very, very far with you guys, so my apologies. Let's find simpler terms for all of this madness that I'm talking about. Think of a good lasagna. Okay? Imagine a good lasagna, and reality is kind of like a good lasagna. Layers of layers of layers. So our lives are like a lasagna, a variety of ingredients all jumbled together, and all of them make kind of our personality and our life experiences. But all of the things are referenced so far, from mutual aid to polymaths and scavengers, and from fragmentary to archipelagic to tentacular to rhizomatic thinking, and from the symbiotic planet to entangled life, etc., are about the basic realization that we are entwined in myriad unfinished configurations of places, times, matters, and meanings. And that we, us, as artists, cultural producers, in the widest sense of the word, can maybe offer something to this world by accepting these unfinished configurations and embracing this kind of ecstasy of influences. And I repeat, to be one, you have to be many. And I came across this tweet by Jerry Salz not too long ago, who is a Pulitzer Prize-winning art journalist. Because, and I really liked it. I read to you, artists do not ask what a work of art means. Ask what a work of art does to you. Art is not a thing or a noun. Art is a verb. Art is something that does something to you. And I so deeply resonate with this, what he said there, because art can really touch, move, motivate, and inspire people. And I mean art really in the widest sense of the word, whether you are studying GWK or music or architecture or product design, or you're an actor, it doesn't matter, like all these artistic practice. So in a way, art is incredibly powerless and incredibly powerful at the same time. And I also believe that the arts and design have a deep repertoire of processes, skills, and perspectives, quite complementary to the sciences, that are central to addressing current social, environmental, and economic challenges. I truly believe in that. And that also that the arts are somehow a hotbed almost of alternative and initially maybe marginal cultural codes that often revolutionize the mainstream in the long run. So artistic thinking allows you to think differently, let's put it this way, maybe wilder and also unbound, and do cherish it and take that for granted. Like, don't try to be like the others, but really make it your own. And such a wild, let's say, mindset has also been addressed by an anthropologist from France in the 1960s. His name is Claude Lévi-Strauss. And his notion of the savage mind, in German it was translated to das wilde Denken. I think the original French is the pensée sauvage. And in this, Claude Lévi-Strauss attempted to characterize two autonomous modes of thought or methods towards acquiring knowledge, like how do we actually gain knowledge, the scientific and the mythical thought. And instead of treating magic or mythical thought and science as opposites, he argued that it would be better to put them in parallel as two ways of knowing. And I have another quote for you guys, starts maybe on the third row there. Claude Lévi-Strauss said, "Art lies halfway between scientific knowledge and mythical or magical thought. It is common knowledge that the artist is something of a scientist and of a bricoleur. So by this craftsmanship, he constructs a material object which is also an object of knowledge." And I think that's really beautiful to take with you, no matter whether you're designing fashion or products or whatever it may be. So in dealing with these objects of knowledge, elaborating on his definition of also mythical thought, Lévi-Strauss now drew on the analogy of bricolage. He said, like, mythical thought is a kind of intellectual bricolage. And this do-it-yourself figure, let's say, of the bricoleur is also an epistemological model. Epistemology is the theory of knowledge, so it's a model of how to gain knowledge. And according to Lévi-Strauss, the bricoleur works with very heterogeneous means and materials to later exploit the possibilities these gathered and stored appropriations offer. Very much like the scavenger that I introduced to you earlier in Jack Halberstam's theory. So in a double meaning, I really encourage you to think wild and think the wild, no matter what your practice is. And speaking also of objects of knowledge, let's clarify something here. I'm very much inspired by a theory by the anthropologist Elizabeth Fisher and her carrier bag theory of evolution, in which she argues that rather than hunting tools, the first ever cultural devices used by humans was probably a carrier bag. So something to carry something, which allowed them to transport the vegetables they gathered. So maybe you're wondering, what do you mean? So, but this is deep. This is actually really, really deep. And it was, to be honest, actually Ursula K. Le Guin, she's a visionary writer and author, who introduced me to this theory. Because she wrote a very short but very influential essay with a foreword by Donna Haraway, by the way, called The Carrier Bag Theory, not of evolution, but of fiction. And in her Carrier Back Theory of Fiction, Le Guin tells the story of human origin by redefining technology as a cultural carrier bag rather than a weapon of destruction. So she picks up Fisher's insight that the first cultural device was probably a recipient, such as a pouch, a net, a bag, rather than something that can implement violence. And she says, we've heard all about the sticks and spears and swords, the things to bash and poke and hit with the long, hard things. But we have not heard about the things to put things in, the container for the thing contained. This is a news story. That is news. So that actually all culture, the way we kind of learn, and if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, is first a bag. We have to first bring things with us. And this carrier bag theory of fiction applies actually, again, to all the artistic practices too. A similar line of thought, Umberto Eco, I'm a big fan, Italian writer, philosopher, etc. He once said, to survive, you must tell stories. He also said, like, I might give you a talk with 1 million facts, and you don't remember anything. But if I tell you one good story, that will stick with you. So actually, I'm doing the opposite. I give you 1 million facts here today, but I hope that altogether it's one good story that you take home with you. And Eco actually fits again because so Eco's interesting. He comes from literature studies, medieval studies. He wrote his first novel, you might know The Name of the Rose, at the age of 45. So he basically wrote hundreds of academic papers, and at the age of 45 he decided to become a novelist and became one of the most successful ones. But before that, he wrote a lot of texts on semiotics, so the study of signs, of symbols, of signification. And his key work is called the Opera Aperta, the open work, in which he argued that all literary text should be interpreted as fields of dynamic, psychologically engaged meaning. He speaks of text, but this can again be applied to artistic practices in general, rather than linear strings of meaning chained together. And he does so too in his own work. It's kind of partial fictionalization, then there's a very purposeful ambiguity in his practice in layers and layers of overlapping patterns. So again, does this sound familiar in any way? Yes, just like Benjamin, Glissant, Halberstam, Haraway, and all the other ones I mentioned before. And to find somehow a way through this mess, all these ambiguities and all these patterns, I like Mieke Baal. So Mieke Baal is a curator, a cultural theorist, and also a video artist. And she came up with the idea of traveling concepts in the humanities. And she says these concepts are not fixed. They travel in between disciplines, in between individual scholars, in between historical periods and geographically dispersed academic communities. And to trace the traveling of ideas or the traveling of concept means to map both the transfer from one discipline, approach or culture of research to another, and also to identify the transformations which emerge through these processes of transfer. Have you come across Abi Warburg? That's a no. So, and another reference for you guys. So Baal's idea of tracing traveling concept is in a way a form of pattern recognition, not unlikely that of Abi Warburg's approach to his famous Mnemosyne Atlas. So Abi Warburg was actually the founder of cultural theory, you could almost say, who in the 1920s created like a Bilder Atlas, tracing recurring visual motifs and patterns across time, from antiquity to Renaissance and contemporary culture. This is the time where we had the first kind of reproductions, basically, in the 1920s of famous artworks, and he put them all on the map. It's imagine an analog version of a Google image search. You put in a certain topic, and suddenly you get a wide variety of images on a certain topic. So that's what Abi Warburg started to do. There was a beautiful exhibition in the HKW a couple of years ago where you could actually watch reinstallment of these kind of boards that he created. But in particular now, at a time in which it has become almost a common practice in the contemporary arts to operate with various often found material, his kind of combinatory work is almost an ideal paradigm for how to deal with a vast amount of visual content of the most diverse type and descent. which is again not unlikely to André Malraux's idea of the Musée Imaginaire, a museum without walls, which is the first instance of explicitly locating the creative act in the process of assembling, in the process of grouping and displaying works of art, which is also a good metaphor for the digital age we're living in. Which brings us to another important point that I want to make, namely that any seemingly original work of art is itself always a product of unacknowledged borrowings. Nothing is original. So artists have always borrowed and stolen from one another's works. In each unique piece, each unique novel, text reverberates with echoes of earlier ones. So cut-up, collage, bricolage, remix, mashup. All these techniques challenge traditional ideals of our artistic unity. And you know my vibe about unity and things being pure. I don't believe in it. And they all emerged in the 20th century, and are, in my opinion, in the 21st century, maybe the most dominant forms of contemporary cultural production. There's Pablo Picasso there because maybe you've seen it on the Instagram meme or whatever. He famously said that good artists copy, great artists steal. Except actually it's false, because we know that because Steve Jobs quoted Picasso, but Picasso was actually quoting T.S. Eliot, who was quoting someone else, etc., etc. Who knows? But all these attributions aside, the kind of this transfiguring reappropriation, recycling of the old to create something new has been explosively central to a series of the artistic movements of the last century and this century. So think of futurism, cubism, constructivism, Dada, musique concrete, situationism, pop, appropriation art, remix art, mashup art, post-internet art. They all are based on that very notion. Or think of Marcel Duchamp's Fountain, or his moustache on the Mona Lisa, or Avol Erisco's contemporary interpretation of Duchamp's Mona Lisa with a bearded Beyoncé. So the methodological, let's say, common denominator here among all these examples is the creation of new outcomes through mixing or reconfiguring that which already exists. French movie director Jean-Luc Godard, he's a master of the cut himself, he famously said, it's not about where things come from, it's about where you take them to. And the cut-up or the remix might, as I said, be the art form of the 20th century, never mind the 21st. Or think of hip-hop culture and its open celebration of cutting, mixing, scratching, and sampling appropriated content to create new storylines. And out of the reconfigured and recontextualized existing materials. For me, this is the very first album that I bought from my own pocket money. It came out in 1989 or 1990, I think it was in Germany. Public Enemies, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back, is, for example, a sampling masterpiece. It's an overture, it's incredible, it's maybe one of the most influential albums of all time. In any of the rankings, if you read what are the, let's say, 1,000 most important albums ever in music history, it's always in the top 100. And, or think in fashion. Think of Dapper Dan, what he already did in the 80s, how he kind of redefined high fashion for the street by taking this hustler style into the mainstream, bypassing the fashion system, creating hybrids that were kind of infused with his own unique style. Or, in the words of KRS-One, founding member of the infamous BDP, the Boogie Down Production, who in an episode of Drink Champs said,
So no one is original. No art is original. We are all being influenced by everything and everyone. The corny motherfucker is the one who doesn't say.
And in other more poetic terms, Jim Jarmusch, film director that you might know from movies such as Ghost Dog, he wrote his 5 golden rules of filmmaking. Read them here, I'll read the whole thing, it's a bit longer. Nothing is original. Steal from anywhere that resonates with inspiration or fuels your imagination. Devour old films, new films, music, books, paintings, photographs, poems, dreams, random conversations. architecture, bridges, street signs, trees, clouds, bodies of water, light and shadows. Select only things to steal from that speak directly to your soul. If you do this, your work and your theft will be authentic. Authenticity is invaluable. Originality is non-existent. And don't bother concealing your thievery. Celebrate it if you feel like it. So again, nothing is original, everything can be authentic. And this is kind of really my thing. So I had the opportunity to run a whole master course on this very subject between 2017 and 2019 in Amsterdam at the Sandberg Institute. It was called Radical Cut-Up. And it was literally looking into the cut-up, the collage, as the contemporary way of cultural production by bringing together 16 master students from all over the world, from very different backgrounds, to really leave their comfort zone and work together and really explore this kind of mode of creativity, let's say. And thereby, let's say, the cut-up served really more as an open container, the term, for a very long list of terms and actions that describe, again, the combinations and the reassembly of existing motives, fragments and images and ideas and so forth from very diverse and disconnected origins into newly synthesized entities. So over the course of 2 years, we did various public events and lecture series, just like this one actually, exhibitions, performances, and we published books. The first thing what we did was we took over an existing magazine. It's called the Lowdown magazine. It's been around for 25 years, youth culture, pop culture, etc., and worked as editors, authors, and designers. We did actually a 700-page thick book that brought together all the master theses that were written by the students on topics as varying as, I don't know, the imaginary horn of Albrecht Dürer's rhinoceros to ghostwriting, to the value of digital art, to a feminist rereading of the saga of Perseus, to object-oriented ontology, etc., etc., etc. It became like an old telephone book, as thick as it was. And last but not least, we did a reader. They're also still all available, which brought together all the texts that inspired me in the first place to do this. So all the important pieces that has been written on these approaches. And in this very tradition now is also where you have to situate this lecture series, Juxtapositions, yeah? That's kind of what I'm trying to keep alive here at the UDK as well. So it's on the one hand my way of showing you a variety of artists, designers, etc., and offering you the chance to kind of engage with them. But it's also my encouragement for you all to kind of copy, to combine, to create and celebrate very experimental forms of artistic production and very deliberately question conventional aesthetic and intellectual notions around the idea of radical novelty or something like that as the essence of art. So be inspired and don't be precious about it. So, Juxtaposition started, as I said, 3 semesters ago. We had a variety of people. We started with Oana Stanescu. She is an architect and designer, teaches at MIT and Harvard. She has been a very close collaborator of Virgil Abloh, but also of Kanye for many years. We had an artist collective called Omsk Social Club, who kind of dealt with live-action role-playing and bleed space. We had Polish curator Matylda Kryszowski on new approaches to curating, designing. We had Canadian artist, meme maker, and disability advocate Sharonda Franklin with us. US-American DJ, musician, singer J.K. Morgan, or maybe AKA Lotic. We had Tabitha Rezer here, the multidisciplinary or multimedia artist and healer from French Guinea. Kenyan visual artist Isaac Kariuki, the Uber-curator Hans-Ulrich Obrist, speaking about his practice, collage artist, performance artist, filmmaker, publishing, and education artist Candice Williams. Nicolas Bourreau, who's a French curator and art critic, very, very important coin terms such as relational aesthetics or post-production. We had German theater director Susanne Kennedy here. We had South Korean graphic designer Yewon Song here, Estonian installation artist Katja Novitzkova, Former UDK graduate Charmin Yungang, she studied fashion design, he is now an artist from Vietnam. Israeli theater maker Ariel Ephraim Ashbel, British artist Daniel Brathwaite Shirley, who works in the animation, sound, performance, and also in video games. Singapore-based German curator Ute Meter-Bauer. It's a lot of people here. Visual artist and co-founder of the artist collective, feminist collective with no name, Diana El-Kaisi Friemuth. Very top. Filmmaker Maisha Liadeb. Artist and designer Tom Sachs as well. And this is now coming to the last semester, recording artist and musician Li Ning from Berlin, the Austrian choreographer and theater maker Florentina Holzinger, Benjamin Alexander Husby and Sead Isik, fashion designers from Berlin, known for the brand GmbH. The Turkish curator Defne Ayas. Now I'm getting lost in all the images here as well. Here again, Jivi Lee, South Korean conceptual artist, Dutch Moroccan architect and director of AMO, like the research think tank of OMA, Samir Bantal, and South African artistic duo Nara Mogoto and Molemo Moyale from Made You Look. So this is, actually it's been a mad lineup over the last 3 semesters, and the beauty of it is they're all online. So if you go on the current juxtaposition link at UDK, you'll see these, you can find the lecture series with its guests from the winter semester, summer semester, etc. So you can all re-watch them. And it's an incredible amount of information that's in these lectures. And it's special. It's very, very special what we hear, and it's not their standard talk that they usually give us. So this is kind of what we've done, and now what's coming up for the next semester. Next week is 1st of May, so we will not see each other, but in 2 weeks we have a graphic design duo here, Lamont Kirch. They were also responsible for the logo, which you saw in the very beginning. The Juxtapositions. I've worked on various projects with them, so they kind of will introduce their practice as graphic designers in 2 weeks from now. Then we have European graffiti pioneer Mode 2 with us. I don't know if that rings a bell for any of you, but he's maybe one of the key figures or heroes and legend of the early kind of graffiti scene, still active. There's a book called Spraycan Art, which came out in the 70s already, and the cover work is his. So personal hero of mine, like I have to say, and I'm very thrilled to be talking to him about this whole development of the subculture. Then Juliana Huxtable, an American artist, writer and performer and DJ. He's also co-founder of the New York-based nightlife project Shock Value. Then Sarah Farina is here. She is a DJ, a music producer, a curator and activist. She's known for the music called Rainbow Bass. And we will explore a little bit the history of DJ culture in a way together with her here, and also just dance or club culture. Then I'm thrilled to have a photographer with us. That's Mustafa Abdulaziz, who will kind of take us on a ride along his various projects from personal to corporate. And then we have British curator, writer and editor Shumon Bazar, who is maybe most known in recent years for these 2 books. Familiar to any one of you guys here? I see only a very few hands up. So incredible little books. They're kind of a 2.0 version of Marshall McLuhan's The Medium is the Message. He did it together with Hans-Ulrich Obrist and Douglas Coupland, famous science fiction author. Then we have Emily Siegel here. Emily Siegel is a writer. Her first novel is called Mercury Retrograde, but she's also co-founder of a couple of collectives. And the first one that got really, really famous around maybe 2014 was K-Hole. I don't know if you heard about this or not. It's a New York-based think tank or forecast group, and they, for example, coined the term normcore. If you heard that before, or they also curated the Berlin Biennale at one point. She also founded Nemesis Global, again, one of these kind of agencies that kind of do future forecasts. Fantastic websites. I can highly recommend it to go both on K-Hole and Nemesis Global. They always, like every half a year, they come out with a new report trying to find a term for the times that we're living in. Then we have a choreographer with us and dancer. That's Puerto Rican artist Kiani Del Valle, who is going to be speaking about her work and her ensemble as well. Then we have a performance and architecture collective here called Guerrilla Architects, speaking of their practice. And last but not least, we have Kaiken, which is an artist collective based both in London and Berlin and coming from very mixed diasporic backgrounds, so Mexican, Japanese, European, Jewish. And they're kind of artists engaged in the metaverse, let's say. So this is kind of the lineup of people that will be standing right where I am standing over the course of this rather short semester. And the setup is kind of always the same. So I'll act more or less as the provider or the host. Then we have a speaker. And then it's you. And then it's the feedback, which is very important for this whole course. As you might have seen, for those of you that are registered in Moodle, if you're participating and you want to get your credit points at the end, you have to write a short reflection after each talk. And this is basically for yourself, not so much for me, even though I read all of your kind of reflections, but this is important because it gives you a chance to once again sit down and quickly think, okay, what really stuck with me? Was this all just mumble jumble? I didn't understand a word what this dude was talking about, or what stayed with you? Or like what inspired you? Try to pick something out that really you took home with you. And I think in also these times where we get so much input, and I totally overkilled you. I deliberately did that. No, I am aware that I gave you way too many references, but just maybe one stayed with you. Fine, job done. Yeah, mission accomplished. But these reflections are every week, and I think you have to do, I don't know, there's 10 talks, and you have to do 8 or something like that to get your credit points. But it's totally flexible. If you're saying, I'd rather make a little song, fine. If you want to make a collage, fine. If you, it's up to you. Like the choice of weapons is yours. And if you want to write, it's nice. I highly recommend writing. It does something to your brain, like literally sit down and write. But you do not have to be afraid, oh, I can't write, I'm not really practiced in that. This doesn't, throw that overboard. No shame in the game, just write, don't worry about that. And it's really a beautiful exercise. So before we start, I always give a quick summary of the feedback from you guys and read it back to you. Yeah? And then I introduce the next speaker, then they talk, and then we enter in this kind of Q&A situation with them. So usually the speakers, I asked them to talk around 45 minutes, maybe, in their conversations, maximum an hour. And then we enter the conversation. Then it's for you to ask questions. Yeah, you can really, I see a lot of familiar faces. It was always quite a lively discussion that we used to have here. And that's really beautiful, and it's an important thing to take advantage of. But again, these reflections are really mainly for you. It's not like you have to impress me with anything. It's for you to really, let this stuff marinate a little bit. And again, as you kind of have figured out by now, what did all of these people have in common that I just showed you? They don't fit into a single category, and they don't draw within the lines. And so now really coming to an end, and also coming back to what I said in the very beginning, my intention really is here to establish a thriving discursive platform for the kind of creative and also intellectual discussion across and beyond kind of disciplinary confinements, and also foster an atmosphere of kind of curiosity, basically, of open exchange. And so if you ever feel constrained by your background or your studies, if you sometimes don't really know if what you're doing is right or what you should be doing, or if you feel like you're not fully fitting in, that's a very good sign. Compliments. And then you're definitely in the right place here. And it's actually you that I'm actually looking for in our own little kind of breakfast club situation, or as my dear friend, the conceptual artist Ahmet Ögüt, once described my approach to education, imagine police academy, but it's not your generation anymore, but just in an art context. So here I'm offering this course that's every Monday at 6 o'clock, runs roughly between 6 and 8, sometimes earlier out. Now it's 7:30, so around 7:30 we're done. Then I just started today Post-Protocol. That's a colloquium for mainly graduate students, master students who are in their final phase and want to pitch their ideas of the master thesis to a very mixed group of students. Then I'm doing an event like seminar or happening with Ariel Ephraim Ashbel, who I mentioned earlier. Did anyone sign up for this one, by the way, that's in the room now? One? Great. That's reading Ruth. So what we're doing there, we are exploring basically the performative nature of religious rituals in an all-night happening in the courtyard here of the UDK at the end of May of the Jewish holiday of El Shavuot. So this is an all-night reading of the book of Ruth, and I'm very curious about this. So this is definitely another experiment. And then there's another one that's happening on Fridays from 10 to 2, not every week, but kind of every other week, where I'm investigating together with my colleague Florian Hadler this kind of seismographic quality of art and technology. So the ability of the arts and the technology to kind of notice the very first weak signals that appear on the horizon of kind of future drifts and future developments. And if all of this has just been way too much for you, that's totally fine. I have a little treat for you. And actually, my dear friend Oana Stanescu recommended this one to me. So I have here for you Benedict Cumberbatch reading a letter from 1965 by pioneering artist Sol LeWitt to his friend, the artist Eva Hesse, who at the time she was facing, like, say, a creative block during a period of, like, self-doubt, and Sol replied with this letter.
Learn to say fuck you to the world every once in a while. You have every right to. Just stop thinking, worrying, looking over your shoulder, wondering, doubting, fearing, hurting, hoping for some easy way out. Struggling, grasping, confusing, itching, scratching, mumbling, bumbling, grumbling, humbling, stumbling, numbling, rambling, gambling, tumbling, scumbling, scrambling, hitching, hatching, bitching, moaning, groaning, honing, boning, horse shitting, hair splitting, nitpicking, piss trickling, nose sticking, ass gouging, eyeball poking, finger pointing, alleyway sneaking, long waiting, small stepping, evil eyeing, back scratching, searching, perching, besmirching, grinding away at yourself. Stop it and just do.
So for now, that's it. Thank you all very much for kind of showing up here. I'm very much, yes, thank you. Looking forward to doing this. It's a big group, no? I think there's 170 something students that signed up. Don't leave yet. We're not quite yet done. So cheer. So there's a lot of students here. It's a very big group, but my aim is that at the end of semester, we'll feel properly like a group here. So there's a task that I like to give all of you, because you're probably sitting next to someone that you know. Today, when you're leaving this class, you have to approach someone that you don't know, introduce yourself to him or her, okay? It sounds super cheesy and super silly, but I see you all, so you have to do it. Now, literally, when you leave today, when we're done, say hi to someone. Hey, my name is so-and-so. I study this and this. What do you study? Just to do a first connection. The next time you come here, try to sit next to someone you don't know. So if you don't know each other, next time you won't be sitting next to each other. Or if you don't know each other, try to find someone else. Because it's a big group, we are a lot of students, but somehow I'd like really for you to understand this is not only to give you a lot of input, but really this is an incredible network, this university, and you have to make use of it. There's so many people out there, connect to all of them. This is, fuck me, fuck all the professors, fuck all the teachers, so unimportant. What's important is you guys and how you connect and what you will do in the future maybe together. Anyways, if you want to follow all that stuff, there's a post-protocol IG, and I also do only professional stuff on mine. So this is a way to kind of keep updated to all of these things. And now, a lot of information. Probably is really hard if I asked you if any questions, huh? But do you have any questions? Who dares to break the ice? Well, we exercise this, okay? This is kind of what we will, this is our main exercise in the semester. And because, again, there's no shame in the game, there's no such thing as a stupid question. This is really, how can I say, like use the opportunities here. Okay, we will see each other each semester, so each week, so don't worry, you can ask me questions afterwards. But if the speakers are here, make sure that you ask them questions. It's the one chance where you can do that, and it's great people coming here. Yeah, so really use that for yourself. So ask again, one more question. Yes, oh, brave one, thank you.
It's not an intelligent question.
No, there's no such thing as non-intelligent
No,
question.
technical one. If we want to send you back a review or something, can we do this through Instagram or by email?
Well, are you connected to Moodle?
Yes.
Okay, there you see actually assignment. So if you go on your Moodle thing, it says first session, that was me. What inspired you? What stayed in your mind? You answer, and then that's how I get to see it. I will read all of you. For those that have been here know that. It's a lot of feedback that I'm reading, but I read every single piece of feedback. Yeah? Yes, another question.
Do we send it every week, or like is there a chance to send like maybe after 3 weeks, 3 different?
Well, I recommend you to do it every week,
Okay.
but I'm totally flexible.
Okay.
Yeah?
It doesn't have to be like on Monday. It can like
No, I did it in the beginning, but it didn't make sense. So you can also send it afterwards. But for yourself, I always recommend do it ideally do it today or tomorrow, then you're done with it, it's still fresh in your mind.
For today?
Yeah, for today you have to do that too.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure, I'm also interested. So it's also a beautiful way. I have to add to this. So I'm sending this feedback anonymously to the speakers afterwards. So the speakers get a feedback from the students. And again, we had crazy people here, Hans-Ulrich Obrist, etc., people that probably give more talks than there's days in the year, yeah? But he immediately replied and said, in my entire career, I've never received a feedback like that. Because it's not common that you get this feedback, that you have to write something, you know, what's the, when you inspired. And so it's great for you, but it's also beautiful for the speakers to get this kind of an answer somehow, no? Because I've been talking now for over an hour. I don't really know if you leave, you think, this fucking idiot, or wow, this is interesting, or curious what comes next, no? And so, yeah, it's important. Yes?
Is there a screencast in case we miss it?
Yes, so you see, Jakob is our tech pro here, and this is being recorded. So even, let's say, you are not here because you're in your hometown, you can stream it live. So each lecture is being streamed, but it's also being recorded and will be then on the UDK website. So you can watch it afterwards, just like all the other lecturers that I presented to you. You can all still watch them.
And the streaming link will be on the course page?
Yeah, so everything's on the course page. The streaming link, etc., is on the course page.
It's
No.
not there right now, but it will be there.
It's if you go on the UDK website where you see all the speakers, there's the streaming link. But you had an additional question? No. Okay. Yes?
So is the streaming going to be on Moodle too or not?
I don't think so. It's just directly on the UDK website of Juxtapositions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where we find the Studium Generale course?
Exactly. Studium Generale, where you can read about all the speakers that are coming. Then there will be, here's the streaming link, and then you click on it.
It's always the same.
Okay, thanks.
So if you once have the streaming link, it's the same. Yes?
And did you hear about any kind of like collaborative projects that came out of this course? Like afterwards and after?
From students?
Yeah. Or like
That's a really nice question. Let's say when I'm done with this, that's when I'm going to start exploring that. Last semester we did the experiment of kind of doing group works, which worked and didn't work at the same time, I have to say, because it's a very big group and it will also it took too much time from each participant. But what I definitely know that a lot of connections happened, and that's the main point. You know, you might be working in the future together, But when I said this, talk to someone, introduce yourself, I really, really mean it. I'm so irrelevant. You guys are relevant about this, and you have to connect. That's the main power that lies in a university like this. And it's not really given, because most courses, you stay in your bubble. You know? And that's why I'm doing this here.
And maybe probably connect to someone who doesn't study the same thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's the whole point. Try to talk to someone who comes from a totally different field of studies. Yeah. Another question? No. So then again, I thank you very much for your attention. I know it was a lot, it was long, I highly appreciate it, but now you know the full story. Happy Monday!